Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Much Watching Soho podcast. It's 5 watching Soho now. Time for 5 o'clock tea. Well, that's more like it.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to Much Watching Soho podcast. In this podcast, I get to chat with international entrepreneurs and experts who have successfully made it into global markets, despite the fact that English is not their native language. Hence the name of the podcast, Much Watch. This is me, Anastasia, the founder of the English Egoist Project, where we develop and cultivate your English self so that you could go global too. And my guest today is Olga Barry, startup growth expert with 8 years of experience. And she has recently launched an agency, a startup growth agency based in the US. So we're going to start talking about Olga's expertise first, being a startup growth expert and a founder of her agency. And then we'll move on to talk about more personal matters, adaptation in the US, what's up with English, and things like that. So that's what we have planned for today. Ola, thanks for coming. How's your day going on so far?
So far, so good. Just had the one call earlier today and very ready to go. Was doing some work tasks, ready to be here. Thank you so much for inviting.
Well, thanks for coming. And where are you streaming from?
I'm streaming from Charleston, South Carolina. If you think about it, it's not like a famous state for, especially for like people who live abroad, like not in the US. Even in the US, sometimes like people have questions. Oh, okay, is it North Carolina or South Carolina? And they're like, where is it? So South Carolina is, if you think about New York and Miami, like those two spots on the East Coast, I'm right in the middle. So that's where I am.
Sounds like a sweet spot. All right. You actually promised to wear pink, and you kept your word. And as you guys may have noticed, the cover for our stream is in Barbie style, and I love the idea. So right. So I think that you somewhat breaking the stereotype. You know what? I'm wearing pink, all right, but I'm damn smart. That's how I see it.
I think so. Yeah, that's kind of like the idea behind it. But on the other hand, I just genuinely like pink. It's easy as that.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. All right, then. So we're going to start talking about you as an expert, right? So you are expert in B2B sales for startups. And your position is a growth expert. So could you please specify what this position entails? What exactly is that you do for your clients, and maybe what results you have achieved so far?
Yeah, for sure. So sales and growth, right? Like what's the definition and like what's the difference here? Because it's very important to understand, because if you think about sales and like the position of like a sales lead and like the sales expert, that's like the portion and the part of my past where I worked corporate in back in Eastern European, very big like top 20 companies, B2B companies, named Contour. If someone watching me from my past colleagues from Contour, big hello. So that's where the most of my sales experience was. Then that's where like I started the career at my entry-level position, like SDR, then succeeded at that position and went all the way to like leading 30 teams in case of like how they perform their sales and methodology selling one product. And that product grew up a lot, more than 2 times, from 300 million to 600 million in the current currency back in Eastern Europe when I was like for 2 years, when I was helping those sales teams to execute. But what's important here is that sales, they mostly appear when there is like a proven business model. When there's a proven business model, there's core sales ideas, core sales values, like the clients, and then you're scaling, and then you creating sales teams, and while you're creating sales teams, you have like the quotas and all that stuff. Growth, however, is a little different because, and it's mostly connected to startup, because growth not necessarily means what you like having revenue, means like selling. Growth is something where you find ways to get attraction to your brand, get feedback about your product, get first pre-sales, pre-clients, pilot projects, so that you collect as much feedback as you can, so then you develop your product better, like to the market needs, and then you can like go to a state where you have positive unit economics and you could build sales teams. So working in the US, I was mostly on the growth part, meaning I helped startups to find as much feedback from the clients as they can about their solution, in case of like the pre-pilots, pre-sales, and strategic and first strategic clients. First strategic clients is not necessarily like a sales mechanism that like well-oiled machine running, as you like can build it as your team about it, or like on top of that, it's like, but it's very important, the first strategic sales, so that you can explore verticals, get feedback from those clients, and again develop better your product. So definitely. And the second part of growth parts for like sales-led growth strategy that I help to execute startups is that you have to narrow down your positioning and find your positioning. So with sales people, they just execute the positioning that's already have proven model with certain conversions. Well, with growth, there's a lot of art to it. I call it like art. It's a lot of like thinking. It's a lot of ways on like, okay, like who will be the best opportunity market for that startup, like how these people, where do they work, what companies they work, etc., etc. So yeah, I guess this is what sales and growth means. And I worked in growth in the US, and I had success recently with like one of the startups that you may heard, Ellie Analytics, and Sevostina, Evelyn, if you guys, Kirill Kaczynski.
If you guys are listening.
Yeah, big thank you, hello, and big heart. I was there as a fractional head of growth, meaning I was actually executing the strategy at one of the channels, and then leading them with the lead generation at like conferences and one of the channels that I work with them. And then I also help them close the strategic clients, so that they can now have all that like better system and structure for sales to hire account executives, hire and like scale that business model that we built together as the core startup team. And I did this with a couple of clients, and I opened the agency a year ago. You can read my
we're gonna get to that.
So absolutely, that's kind of like the success story is like finding from uncertainty of a startup with the commercial strategy, and getting them to a point where they have a lot of leads and then get for strategic clients.
Yeah, exactly. So the insight from me was that growth, well, according to you, growth doesn't mean necessarily higher revenues. So if we compare sales to growth, sales is more like following the beaten path, right? And growth, trodden path, right? The path that hasn't been explored before. So you basically build it from scratch, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Growth have to lead to revenue. Like eventually that's like the end goal. And you have to understand here that the growth without revenue is not growth. I'm not advocating for just growth where like we're doing a market research. No, I'm absolutely, that's like kind of my core values, that growth have to be connected to revenue and proven like strategic clients. But growth not necessarily means that only revenue. Like you also get a lot of insights and how to position yourself better.
Yeah, it's finding your market fit, right, as well as that.
Yeah, product market fit is something that growth have to like basically support, but it's not as easy as like it sounds like. Oh, we'll just find the product market fit. It can take years for the B2B product to do so.
Yeah, that brings me to my next question. Actually, how long does it take for a startup to succeed in the US? So you've just said that to find your market fit, it might take years, right? So can we safely assume that to succeed will take years as well, like 5 years, 10 years? So what's your prognosis on this?
There's no estimate to that. I'd say there's different models around like how you can build your startup. Like let's say if you're like a native out of the big tech companies with the network in the area of verticals that you're selling as a startup, knowing the solution very well yourself, then it could take you 6 months. And I know the examples. I know like one of the founders from San Francisco. I'm not gonna name the company, but they got from like they opened their startup in July, I think, and then right now it's less than a year, and they already have like 140,000 users. They have like thousands of clients. They're growing like crazy. Forbes is writing about them. That's like the good startup like model everyone wants to believe in, and the investors
Sounds like
want
a
to.
unicorn, huh?
Yeah, it is. I'm pretty sure they're gonna get this status, like, but this status is definitely more than a year. We're not talking about the unicorn status. That could take like 10 years and more, and that's okay. But to just actually succeed, depending on like what you get successes, but like let's measure successes like you found the product market fit, or you found like the business model that you execute, and it will be eventually profitable. It like for the founders that, for example, don't have network, they need to create partnerships, they need to create clients. They're like immigrants, like I am. It definitely takes more than a year. That's like an estimate that I would say. I would say roughly 2 to 3 years, and you have to be patient. You have to get funds for that. You have to be prepared. So that's kind of like the estimate for the situations that are most likely that happen.
Yeah, actually 2 to 3 years, that doesn't sound too bad, I must say. But still, there are a lot of startups that fail in the US markets. And in your opinion, what are the reasons to that? Some most common reasons why startups fail in the US?
Well, the most startup fail because they didn't find their clients, and most of they're just not cash positive, and they didn't find investors for the like to invest their patience in like to wait for 2 or 3 years while they're working on for finding like their source of clients, where like the clients will go quarter to quarter with the prediction model. So it's the lack of money, as simple as that. Usually like someone could argue with me, and I'm free to talk about this, but overall, but then the cause of lack of money, obviously, what's the cause of lack of like money, lack of patience? It's that's the startups create some product that nobody needs. The startups go to the markets that are very, very high. There are red oceans, big competition there. So even if the product is needed, it's like already hundreds or sometimes even thousands of software vendors on in that niche, and to differentiate it and to get like a portion of market, it's very hard. The customer per acquisition is like very very high, and like you can't succeed in that business model. So it could be a lot of reasons, but overall it ends up to like that they're commercially not successful.
Yeah, and I'd like to add on that, maybe to expand on that a little bit. So, the guy I was streaming with recently, uh, he told me that startups fail not because of some financial problems, but because their founders, startup founders, run out of hypotheses, so run out of ideas. So, do you agree with that take?
Um, well, yes. Let's say like you have investments, like you raise the seed round, right? And you have a lot of hypotheses to test in case of like the market, like what's gonna work uh, for like commercially be successful, what's not gonna work. And once you like get to a point when you trust everything that you plan to test, you don't have any new ideas how to execute commercially successful, then I would agree with this statement, yes, because then like the money of the investors is like it's burned, right? There's no more money to like use the hypothesis, and sometimes there might be even like still money that they get back to investors, but they like run out of ideas. They test all the hypotheses they don't want to test, nothing worked out, and they just stop the project and go move on. That's kind of normal. Yeah, I would agree with that statement, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. And now I'd like to go a little bit deeper into what exactly you do and how exactly you convert your contacts into leads. And the next point I'd like to discuss is actually the fact that you have attended 7 major tech conferences in less than a year. Uh, so, which means that you're not only hustling in startups, you're also hustling at conferences, right? So, my question is that a way for you to expand your network to be a speaker and attendee at conferences?
Attendee, yes, like expand the network. Let's summarize the question. Like, is it a way to expand the network? Absolutely, yes. I just 7 conferences, just to like break it. 4 conferences I did with Ellie, the project that I mentioned before, and 3 conferences I did by myself in the recent 2 weeks. So it was the Startup Grind. Yeah, it was Emerge in Miami, one of the biggest tech conferences, Startup Grind and Stripe, not including all the networking events. Obviously, there's like dozens of those. I don't count them. But out of those 3 events, I already subscribed to clients to work with me, both AI startups. They're great. I feel like they'll have a lot of success working together with. I really believe in those corporate collaboration, and I have a lot of pre-sales and clients to follow up with. I'm actually, if anyone is watching me right now, like, hey, like she's doing a podcast, not like doing a proposal for us. So it's like it makes sense. But speaking about the network, of course, it's the way to expand your network. Of course, it's the way to find the clients. There's a lot of nuances and details into that, like a lot. So, and
Absolutely.
I see, people just don't have much success, but I see and I understand why.
Right, exactly. And my next question is how exactly you convert these contacts from conferences into leads afterwards, because from what I gathered communicating with you, so the preparation for the exact conference, so any kind of conference, it's, well, if you have in mind, of course, to convert these contacts into leads, it starts prior to the exact conference, like maybe a month or 2 months ago, right? So you do some research on LinkedIn, you gather info like who's attending this conference, like, so you might, I don't know, get in touch with these guys and introduce yourself in advance. So could we look into this process of how you build your network at conferences?
Yeah, for sure. This is like a very important part is the preparation. I just want to make people feel more comfortable with the timing. It's definitely not 2 months in advance to the conference, but depending on what you're gonna do with the conference. Actually, if you're sponsoring a conference, it could be a year in advance. Honestly, like if you're sponsoring an event, it's actually very very well to. Very, very good to know the organizers of that conference, to talk to them, to be friends with them, so that you can get the better sweet spot. At the Merge, for example, I just there was one booth that got like big attention, and the product and like services just did custom software development services, which is like thousands and thousands of companies. It's a very important product on the market. Without custom software development, a lot of tools and like solutions couldn't be growing, developing, and innovating. But it's like a big competition. But yet they have such a big gig, like such a big like attention around that booth, just because the location was very good. And like the locations, they start preparing like way in advance. And if there's some certain like layouts like already taken, or like the organizers already like get the priority to those companies because they're friends, so etc etc. So if you're sponsoring, you definitely have to it's okay to like sponsor the last minute. We did that, but it's better to do it in advance. What is my strategy is a little different rather than sponsoring. The strategies where I don't sponsor, I just go as an attendee. But yes, I do prepare a score who's going to be at that particular conference. That's how I actually choose what conference to attend at first. So I find the potential attendees via like engagements of their like who engage with the communication with the posts with the attendees on LinkedIn to like be interested, like, okay, who's like the audience who does this conference attract, and then based on that I make decisions. If that audience I actually can be of value, I can provide some certain help, some certain insight. And usually what I'm looking for is startups in the like pre-seed seed round, second time startups preferably. because they understand like how important it's like to invest in the growth acceleration, like to speed up the growth cycles. Anyway, so and I pre-booked the meetings at that location, at that conference, and in March, for example, I pre-booked like 17 meetings with the startups, and this is very important. To do that prior to when all the opportunities comes, when everyone can meet up and network, because there is networking apps on these conferences. You can use them as well, and they work great, but definitely you have advantage if you're already like prior to the event and like talk to a person, maybe sometimes even had a Zoom call. I had those cases as well, like you have a Zoom call and then you meet on site at the conference. I don't know if did that answer the question. So that's kind of how I prepare the conference. So what was
Yeah, actually, I think you did. So when one is to network at a conference, it's not merely to show up at the conference, right? There's some prior work that has to be done, right?
You can show up though. You can show up technically. Like that's what I did with Stripe. I just show up because I didn't plan to be there. And it went very well, I feel like, but you can show up and just talk to people. It's just going to be less efficient. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So if you want to get the most of it, I think that proactive approach is what is needed there, right? Just to prepare in advance sounds like a good idea. All right, and you have mentioned that not only were you the attendee at that conferences, but also a speaker, right? So how regularly do you go there as a speaker?
No, I just I'm not speaking like regularly at all right now. Like only once I did that, and I couldn't even say like it was a speaking. It was just like an introduction. I guess when I said the speaker was for the to understand like that there was this in my experience, but it's not like I do it on the regular basis. I think to have it's interesting actually to I'll give an example. So let's say someone is speaking on stage, for example, I don't know, Gary 10, YC Combinator, like CEO, or Maya, always forget her last name. Like she's the CEO of Rada. Rada just got the Series B funding. They have 200 employees. It's like a great startup. They're growing. I saw her at MyCon, and I saw her as well at the Startup Grind. She's great. I really enjoy how she talks, she thinks, and how the startup is developing. But anyways, like, and if you wanted to like go speak to these people, to those speakers, right, and like you and you have like some type of proposal and offering, you have to be relevant to them and be on the same stage, same like I wouldn't say level, but like on the same understanding of like what's going on in that particular company, and like how can you contribute to that company, if that's like the end goal for you to collaborate with that company. Like I don't collaborate with companies at Series B. That's like a very like not me at that moment, and probably I'm not seeing myself being there like in 5 years. It's just not my priority and like area of interest, because it's more of like a corporate like management kind of role required, where like you build processes prior, like then just creating processes, like you making processes more efficient. So like there would be no point for me like to come and talk to them. It would be like very irrelevant to them, so I'm gonna like waste that time. And like it's the same point, like I'm kind of wasting my time. But obviously everyone wants to go to like to the higher level people, and just like that way like you evolve. Yeah, this could be a strategy, but like I feel like it's you have to really know your like niche, who like where your expertise is currently, what stage and what kind of like equipment, what expertise do you have at the moment, who do you target, and like if you can be relevant, if you can be helpful, that's where like you can collaborate with speakers, talk with speakers, and like go chat with them, unless you just want to genuinely ask a question and like you don't want to propose any collaboration, but you want to ask a question, have an answer, but don't like pretend that, oh, like this was like, I don't know, something more than that, because yeah, they just you have to be like understanding how those things work.
Yeah, got that. Thank
Because I
you
saw a
so
lot of
much.
people, like I'm seeing a lot of people like they're very far away in case of like their career development, let's say, right? Far away from the speakers on stage, and they're like running and like, oh, I want to like ask them the questions and all that stuff. I mean, it's nice if it's just like for the question reasons, but they have some type of offer usually to them, and their offering is like, I guess, way like different from like the speaker would want to pay
Yeah.
attention to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, out of the speaker scope, yeah, I would say. Yeah, all right. Thank you so much. Right, so there's one more question that I wanted to ask in regards to your work as a growth expert. So could you please tell me the types of buyers that you worked with and what is important in lead generation for such buyers? And probably if it's not a bother, just how many types there are in general, actually.
Ooh, how many types of buyers? No, like this is a very complex question. It's like lots of different buyers.
Okay.
When we talk about buyers, like I guess let's say that like there's different classifications of like how can you segment buyers. For example, we can segment them by geography. Like could be the United States, the buyers of the United States. That is like one category, and like I worked and I prioritize, and I like just recently had a call like this week, and like, can you work with other markets? No, I believe like if you work in the local market as the growth sales expert, you have to understand the local buyers of like the country and sometimes even the region. So the buyers of the United States, they have their behavior, they have their like cultural differences. I feel like we can go like talk about that later. We plan to do that, but yeah. So but then there is buyers of like how by persona, by like the way like they're the segmenting of like the persona buyers, meaning like their title, meaning they're marketers, they're like low code, no code development tools, they're like small business owners. And that's kind of like the buyers that I previously worked with. It was marketers, low code tool developers, product managers as well, small business, like small and medium business owners of like the retail and sort of things like that. And well, there was like, I guess there was more segments that I worked with, because there was like I had 12 clients last year. I just couldn't remember, but like the priority was those types of buyers. So the most important for the buyer, like the most important for those different buyers is the level of details they want. Like yeah, so like when you're answering, like you trying to like advertise your startup, it's not just enough for like the marketers, for example, as buyers, to say what type of results you're planning to provide, but mostly you have to answer how you're planning to do so. And that's where a lot of startups kind of like fail. Like, yeah, because like, okay, we want to do this and that, and we will give you like 300 ROAS, like better advertising strategy, whatever. It's like, how? Because there's so much different ways how you can like achieve that better like ROI result for marketers, and they're prioritizing like what do they believe in the strategy of like how they're going to work. So like the buyers, the marketers, they're like detailed, and you have to like detailed, but yet you have to be very like engaging with them, meaning like you have to create some type of personal connection into that. Your copyright, like your messaging, your position should be boring and like shouldn't be like corporate. It has to be like on point, has to be like fun, you say it, right? But it also has to like answer the question like how your startup will help us. Low cost, like small business owners, they're a little different. they're like more of like, okay, can you do this for me at all? Like their main concern and like the main criterion how they choose, like, so for example, startups to work is like, I don't want this to be my pain point. I don't want to do it. Like compared to like the people in the company, like the business owners, they want to like they want to work with startups that will take some protests out of their plate. Like because the business owner have so much things to worry about, he wants to worry about this one thing like way less. And it's not about how in this matter, it's more about like, just take it away from me, and I want to trust you, and I want you to solve this problem for me. So I guess it's like the examples of the buyers. But yeah, for example, I don't work with like dev communities, with developers that are not low code, like no code developers, like the actual developers, because like the sales-led strategy most of the time doesn't work with them, and they are very, very detailed. Like you have to build communities with them, you have to like show your code, GitHub, all that stuff. It's very, very not about like me, and I just simply don't believe that my approach, or like the approach of the sales-led, could apply to those types of buyers.
Got it. Thank you so much. And now we are making this. Sorry, what was that?
Oh, I didn't ask anything.
Okay. Right. No worries. Right. So we are gradually making this transition, and we are about to talk about the life in the US in general, and actually the integration in the country, blending in with the Americans, and we're going to talk about English. And actually, one more question that relates to business still. Is it true that to manage a startup that is focused on the US market, you have to reside in the US? I heard, rumors have it that you have to be living in the US in order to network effectively. Is that true?
Well, yeah, it is true. Like if you like, it's true for the most part. Like returning back to our conversations, we talk like quite a bit about networking and conferences, right? You have to be in those. You technically can leave like a European country, like I don't know, Portugal, Spain. I just had like these week conversations with Spanish developers that, like they're focusing more on like the local market, and they need like the local partners in the US here. So being in the US is like almost mandatory, but it doesn't necessarily means that you have to be and like in the US building a startup. Like your co-founder could be there or could go there like a lot of the time, can fly there to conferences to network like temporarily. I have examples like that where companies, they reside in like Cyprus and they go to the US like occasionally, and that works, and they're like scaling up and they're developing their startups. But most of the time I do believe you have to have at least visit. Better have like a partner or local partner in the US, and the best if like you live here. Yeah, absolutely. But there's exceptions to this, like as always, but I talk about like the standard kind of like business approach.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know. All right. Okay. So there was some idea in my mind, but I think I lost it. Yeah, just a sec. What was that? Well, maybe it'll come to me. All right. Thanks a lot. All right. One more business-related question that is also partly related to the U.S. culture. So when business people are networking, it's not only once that I heard that notion: do not start your letter with "I hope your letter finds you I hope this letter finds you well." All right, so this is kind of a disaster. It's kind of a red flag the way I heard it. So can you confirm or deny that?
Confirm, yeah, for sure.
Right. What's the problem with that in your opinion? Then I will share my insights on that.
Well, again, I'm very like not linear. Like I can't just answer like in one way, like no, but I always like this structure. So like if you if you start this email as you like hardly talk to this person, or even worse, you never talk to this person, like you don't care about this person's day. Like, you don't know them so well or at all. Like, that means that you're like kind of faking it. Yet, like, yeah, you generally, like, if you like in the meeting, like in the culture of the US, you always ask like, how are you? And you ask like face to face, and like you look at the people's eyes, and like, they say good or bad or whatever. But like if you could pronounce it on the email, like, I hope this email finds you well, and just like, right, like that's like the formulation.
Cliche, right?
Yeah, it's like a cliche. It's just like, it's very like cliche, more like the problem. Yeah, it's bad. It's nobody likes that stuff. And but if you do work with that people, sometimes hope this email finds you well could work, but it doesn't mean anything. Like, it's just like the problem with the communication, you never try to communicate things that don't mean nothing. Like, you know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like, there has to be
Yeah.
a meaning in every word that you communicate with.
Right, yeah. So please hear out my theory on that. Thing is that I'm currently based in the UK, and I hope that letter finds you well a lot, as you might guess, right? So I'm saying, well, my theory is this is perfectly normal and it's right grammatically. It's just that the way I see it, the Americans, they are more direct than the English, right? And they are willing to get straight to the point, yeah, whereas the English are using like, I hope it wouldn't be a bother, but could you kindly blah 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 blah, something like that. And apart from that, I hope this letter finds you well sounds kind of formal, and I believe that the culture and the tone of the voice in startups, it's more laid back and relaxed, so you are more likely to start your letter with like, hey, name, how are you? Something like that. Am I right, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. It depends. So it all depends. But like, speaking of like, how hope your this email finds you well, it's just simply boring. Also, just boring. Like, as you mentioned, like you see it all the time. It's just like, I don't know.
It
It's
creates a
like,
distance
yeah,
between.
yeah, I feel like it creates the distance. I feel like we need some like psychologist, like expert here to explain why. Because
Psycholinguist,
as
yeah.
sales and communications, like a lot of psychology, like a lot. So that's how, like, that's kind of my hobby also, like to read the psychology books and then like find some certain insights and like people's and buyers' behavior.
Yeah.
But yeah, and how are you? Do I ask that? Yeah, I ask that sometimes. But like, what do I prefer? I prefer like just trying to like remember all my yesterday emails that I'm trying to say. Like, I didn't even write anything because I feel like in the like very like tight communication with someone, you go straight to the point. Yeah. But
Yeah.
if you didn't if you didn't like have a conversation for a long time with a person, then you can ask like, hey, how have you been so far? Like, I've a long time no see, things like that. So I'd say if you like tightly connected in the communication, don't do anything like that, just go straight to the point. Or like if you have certain like insights on like their weekend, or like, hey, I know you go to like the trip before, you can mention like personalize it. But if you don't have anything and like you didn't talk for a while, then you can ask like, hey, how are you, how have you been?
So yeah, let's just summarize it. So the tone of voice in startups is probably more informal and relaxed, and you'd rather not use some very formal expressions like, I hope this letter finds you well. So do not use these cliches, right?
I guess like financial vertical, they're a little bit different. Like banking, insurance, they might, but I'm not sure. Don't work with those verticals.
Yeah, got it. Thank you so much. And now one more question. Actually, I've been meaning to ask it earlier, but it slipped my mind. Yeah. So you previously worked as a growth expert, and I bet you still are, but you recently started your own company, growth agency for startups. And my question is, why start your own company if, I don't know, you, correct me if I'm wrong, you were building career as a growth expert before?
Yeah. first idea that I have in my mind, this which is correct idea, but there's a lot behind it. Is the first idea is more money. Simply more money. Like if you work with startup as the growth expert, you have to be like in a cycle of 4 or 5 years dedicated to one startup where you can go to like the income level where I can go with, where I have an own agency and can scale it in a year. So like in a year, I have the like the numbers that I'm gaining like while subscribing is on the scale model, like the startups that I can help with. And it's like in a year I can achieve something that I would have achieved with just one project in like the scale of 4 or 5 years when they really grow, and I really like get a lot of clients. They had a lot of like have big brand. They have like, I don't know, I generate like 10 million pipeline and get like 7% of it or whatever. Like you count those numbers, and then when you count those numbers, definitely like the agency, like in the business model seems more attractive. So for that reasons is one of the reasons, and the second reason is that I truly believe that the strategies that I execute for startups, it's proven to be working like for a number of projects, and it seems like I know the best practices, and it's not like I always evolve with those best practices of growth. And I recently went to the conferences, right? One of the parts where like when I was exchanging experiences with other growth experts, and I understand that I'm like in the loop of everything that other like experts are in. Like I don't have not execute or tried or ever did something crazy that I've never tried before, because as soon as something goes out, I'm on the hunt for the best solutions, for the best methodologies. I'm on the hunt for like my own growth hacking ideas. So I truly believe that the strategy that I help the startups with, it's one of the best that you can find. So, and it's like genuinely like you want to expose the strategy to as much products and like as much projects as you can. So it's like two ways, two sides of coins. Two sides of one coin. Is one side is like it's like just more profits, and the second side, while it's very hard because like even right now, because like you need to scale the agency, all the profits goes back to like the business, because I need to hire, like I'm hiring right now. So if anyone's listening and you like my vibe, please do reach out. Like I'm hiring for the teams with like the SDRs who, and like technical SDRs I call, but all the details we can talk about it. Just reach out if you're interested, like in just me personally, we can talk it out. So I'm hiring. So it's again, like you collect, like you generate revenue, like and you reinvest, and you do this like for a year. So for a year, you don't make like much money as like as a business owner, a year or two. But then like you have your asset is the company. You can either sell it, you can scale it, a lot of things you could do. While you like just a growth expert to one startup, you're very tightly connected to like what they create. And if their product, like give you an example, before ChatGPT got released, there's a lot of startups that were doing like well about like AI chatbots, AI like whatever, like they were researching and they were unique. Now ChatGPT and like Claude, like different LLMs and like the models, the AI models, like they're like replacing their startups, and their startups is like being like eat up and like finding troubles, like scaling, like and like evolving again. And if you're tightly connected and invest your time for 5 years in those startups, and then like you think like, oh, this is the time, like we're growing, and then like something like some innovation comes up and it like eats your startup, and then like you have to like, go like work somewhere else, and you don't like get the desired income.
Survival of the fittest, right? Okay. Right. Thank you so much. Yeah, this seems like a logical solution, starting your own company that will allow you to scale your business and potentially reach out to more clients. Yeah. But it also involves, I don't know, a whole new range of responsibilities. Yeah. Now you're going to be an HR manager, right? I don't know, PR, what else, you name it, accounting, everything. And actually, I would love to meet with you 1 year after, right, in a year. And I would be interested to ask you how things are going. Yeah, because it's getting this experience, first-hand experience is pretty valuable. Yeah, so we should Godspeed with that.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it because I opened my company last year, and I was thinking I'm gonna focus on growing it, but I got stuck with one of the priority projects. Not got stuck. Like I was just happy generally to work because I did that like for the past 6.5 years, and before it was very familiar for me. So it's easy to get trapped into the same like habits of trying to work as an employee in the startup rather than like scaling your agency. So that's what happened. But now, like my intentions is very clear that nothing can stop me like scaling and making the business model that will be easy to execute on scale with employees and all that stuff.
That's the spirit. Okay,
So in
right.
a year, definitely let's sync up. I promise I'll come up with success cases of.
Yeah, new juicy stories. Yeah. I'll take you up to that word. All right, thank you. And now we are moving on to actually my favorite part, cultural part. So your integration in the U.S. society, what's up with English and all that jazz, and you being an immigrant. Oh, no, actually, let me get back a little bit earlier. It's actually a story about how we met because I knew you were working with Ellie, and I reached out to you saying that, hey, we're also working with Ellie. Would you be interested in joining the what was that, team building events that we run for the guys? And Ola told me, hey, thanks for the offer, but actually I have perfect English. And you know what? This is something what many people would would kill for. Perfect English. So I want to ask you about your journey in regards to English, how you built your English. Did it happen before the US, or did the US play a major role in your becoming a confident English speaker?
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for the question because I will give also like a similarity like to startups and. In startups a lot of things you have to be actually lucky in a lot of things like, but you can manage that luck. You understand the trends, you manage that luck, right? With me, I guess it's similar with English. So I can't say I was managing it when I started speaking English when I was 3. Definitely not. I guess in that pure moment, I was definitely just lucky. Thanks a lot for my parents. I appreciate that them a lot for that. They brought me to like an English kindergarten, then English school. In fact, I have to do tests and pass the tests to become like the one of the students of the first grade, like the first grade student in the school, just like not the school, like a pupil, right? English, like in British English, they call it pupil. But anyways, like first grade student in school when I was 6 years old, I was passing the exams of English. I was 6.
Wow.
Yes, and like to merge from the 4th grade to 5th grade, we were also passing like essays. We were like learning them by heart. It was just like broaden your horizon and things like that. Or maybe broaden your horizon. That was just
That
like
was
later.
no ordinary school, right? There was no
Yeah,
ordinary
it was
school.
an English school. Yeah,
okay,
it was
yeah.
an English school, and that pure moment, I got very, very lucky. Thank you so much for my parents. So I learned English very well, like in school. But yet, you have to understand that there was like a lot of people around me who also studied at that school, and they studied not so well. So their English at that time weren't good as my English, even like if you compare like on the level of just like all of the students. I was studying pretty well at like the most of the times I was like A/B grades, like in Eastern European it's like 5-4 grades, so I was just studying hard English in English school. We had like more than 10 hours of English in school, but then 10 hours a week of English, just like English writing, English speaking, well, everything. That was pretty cool.
So
But
in your case, it was kind of a long journey, to
yeah,
master
it was.
English.
It was. It's just like I'm 27 right now, so I've learned English since I was 24 years. So I got an advantage, yeah, to be fair. But like I stopped studying the English so closely when I was in college. The college English, I was in St. Petersburg. I got into the college in St. Petersburg, and the English classes, they was terrible. They're just terrible. And this college life, I guess, like you get distracted by other things. So for like that time of period, I stopped like using English as much. But then I met with my current husband, which was like 8 years ago. So I was 19, like college time in Russia, where we're originally from. We start talking a lot in English with my that time boyfriend, currently husband, and I guess that helps a ton. But what makes it like to the level where I feel confident about communicating on conferences, speaking, and etc. As an immigrant is definitely a part of living in the US, because and it's also a part of living in the US and a part of like making choices. For example, choices to because my husband, my current husband, he speaks Russian. He speaks Russian, right? So we could
I'm
have.
sorry, is he Russian or
No,
is he
he's
American?
not. He's not, but
Okay.
he speaks and speaks still Russian. So I could have chosen, like my choice was like I could choose to speak Russian with him, but I chose to speak English. Same as like I choose to read only English news for like the last. I don't read news at all right now for like the common news, just like business news for the last 2 years. But the last, I don't read news. It's kind of like also an insight about my life. But for the last 5 years, like the business news. Once like we immigrated, I only almost read in English. I subscribe on Telegram channels, but archive them. Like I don't really like look them up until like I search for something specific. I read English business news. I read like all my source of information for like development is all in English. My movies are in English, so it's all a number of choices that you can make, and like not living in the US.
Yeah.
That helps with your English.
I'd like to comment on that. Well, the thing is that a lot of immigrants, even when they go to the country of the language they're learning, either to the US or to the UK, they they continue living in their own bubble. So they communicate with their fellow citizens, right? They consume the information in their native language, and they actually do not integrate into society. So this is why their language stagnates, right? It does not improve. So basically what I'm trying to say is that when you move abroad, that does not guarantee that your English is gonna get better, unless you make these conscious efforts like you did, right?
Absolutely, yes. And again, like all of my friends are Americans right now. I have a couple of Russian friends here too, but the majority, like dozens of friends, are all Americans, like English speaking. Not they might be immigrants, but they're English speaking folks. I just like here, like where I meet, like and I live in Charleston, they're all English speaking, and like, Charleston is like a perfect city and like I immigrated to the US. Also, like a little background, I immigrated to the US in the perfect time. You would call it perfect, but they actually very imperfect, but I call it perfect. It's just like my personal understanding of that time is that it's exactly when the COVID started, like first masks, and like we were flying in, and like the border shut down like two weeks after we flew into the US. So we got very lucky first, and then like when it was COVID, I integrated by like just you have to be like talk to your neighbors. You have to be like active around like the grocery shopping and everything, and you just have no choice but to like kind of speak English. But I guess you can have a choice to go to like the Russian communities, and a lot of people do here go to like to the parties with Russian speaking people. It's awesome. I'm all pro it, because like you remember your roots, but my path is a little different. Like I chose to like English and English speaking friends.
All right. So would you say that you blended in with the Americans successfully?
Yes, I think so.
Yes.
My husband, he disagrees that I call myself like an American, and he's like very like disagreeing with this concept. He's like, no, you're not. Which he's he's joking, like, to be like, not to be fair, like, he's joking, but I definitely feel American state of mind, like mind frame, American personality, American culture. I like it. I love it. Like, and I'm a very hardworking person. Like, I just work, most of the time. I wake up, I work, I have some, like, chores at work, and it's a lot of work, and that's kind of like what excites me. I love it. And but it's people, when they move to America sometimes, they don't like to work as much, like, as you have to work here. It's definitely harder on them.
Let me just take something down so I wouldn't forget it. Right, I wanted to comment on this. So you said that you made friends in the US, you blended in, and my previous guest, Daniil Sherbakov, he is living in the UK, and actually I think this is something I find we have it in common with him. I mean, it's harder to make friends with the Brits than the Americans, because I don't know why. The British people are more reserved and they value their privacy, whereas the Americans are more open and, outgoing. And the Brits, they even have this thing. If you guys read a book by an anthropologist, actually, Watching the English, it's called, the book about the British behavior, she says that even to share a name for the Brit might be too much. So, no, you've got to first communicate with this person in order to ask him for his name. I mean, what? So the Brits and the Americans are very, very different, actually. Yeah. Thank you. My love, my heart actually lies with the US. Just saying.
Yeah, it's very easygoing here. Very easygoing. You can make friends. Like, I have so much hobbies. Like, when I'm not, like, Saturday, Sunday, I try to, like, not to work. So, but again, I guess I just can't sit down home. I have hobbies, like festivals, like car meetups, and you just go, and like based on that hobbies, you create friends, and people are very open.
Actually, one more question. If we to compare the UK and the US, so I heard some people say that it's best when you earn American salary, working for an American company, but living in the UK. So American money, but life in the UK. What would you say to that?
It's a strategy. I mean, it's a strategy. I'm not gonna fall for it. Like, I've never been to the UK. Just like for the notice. I think it's a beautiful city, like country, and London's a beautiful city. I've heard a lot good about it, but I've personally, for that exactly reasons, like British people is like very close, like it's very hard to like break through the and build connections with them. Like, I don't think like this geographically like will be interesting for me to relocate. For other people, let's say they're British by like nature, like they're British and they work for the US company and like they live in the UK, that works the best. Yeah, definitely. As well as like many other countries, because the US has the most, like the highest salaries. If you live like in Mexico, Brazil, Poland, Kazakhstan, you name it, and you have the US salary, it's definitely a very good strategy. Yeah. But yeah, you know what's funny? I have a funny story. So my husband recently, like a couple of months ago, like he came up to me like, hey, do you want to, because we sometimes invest in things, and like do you want to like invest in like a guy from Britain, from Ireland, called me with like a British accent. We want to invest in like the wine of not the wine, like the whiskey bottles, so like the whiskey barrels and stuff like that. I was like, no, like what? I work in startups, like no, this is my expertise in investing the startups, and of course. And the funny part is that the criterion by why he liked and wanted to invest because he likes British accent, and he calls
Oh
him
my God.
and you would be it's not just him. Like I work and I ask like American owners. It's usually more conservative American like founders that say it, like on company owners. They're like, yeah, we consider British like a very like elegant, classy accent. So like if you
Yeah.
hire like a British cold caller, let's say, you have definitely points. So that's funny.
Yeah, and actually, that made me think about another question in regards to English. So, do you think that deliberately working on one's accent is essential to succeed in the U.S.? So, should one even bother about the way they speak, about their accent? Will it help to blend in with the Americans, do you think?
I think it's a strategy. I say, in my case, because my strategy and my profession, my well-being, my career is tightly connected to communication and like talking to people. I have to develop a natural accent, like intonations and speaking, and be like very well prepared, equipped with the business language and things like that. But it's not necessarily a case for like if you, let's say, tech startup founder, and you as like a tech startup founder, you have to like, it's more like you put your effort into where it makes more sense. You make something better that's already good, which is like your like product technical skills, and that's where like your area of expertise that I would say, if like I'm thinking about the strategy, would enhance. And then like if your English is not like like it has to be good for understanding, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like a great American accent, so that investors, they understand what's your strategy, they understand how you think, they're clear. But if you talk like in your own intonations and accent, I say it doesn't matter. The most important is that you can deliver your thoughts clearly
Effectively,
to
yeah.
the yes, and the accent's not so important.
Okay, got it. And actually, a follow-up question. What English level do you think international teams should have? And you first share your insights, then I will share mine, okay?
Yeah. You go ahead. Let's start first like this.
All right. So since we are working with international teams and we prepare them for their intercultural communication, I would say that the higher a person goes in an organization, the higher English level they should have. Because let's say if it's just a developer, run-of-the-mill developer, they probably B1 will suffice, I would say. But if we take C-level positions and the higher position in the company, so then of course B2 minimum, and if networking comes into the game, then probably even C1, yeah. Because the higher position, as I was saying, the more communication it entails, and the more strategies you should be aware of. And the accent, yeah, I would probably agree with you here, but a red flag that comes to my mind is not even a red flag. So when one should start working on their accent, when they realize that their interlocutors ask them to repeat oftentimes, okay? So that means that the communication doesn't run effectively, okay? So when this problem appears, right?
Yeah.
And another problem is when you do not understand fast speech, fast connected speech that the Americans produce, because linguists claim that in order to decode the accent, you should be able to imitate some particular sounds, phonemes, intonation patterns. So these skills are interconnected, pronunciation and listening. So yeah, in this case, so just to summarize, it depends on your position in the company. The higher position, the higher level of English you should have. Accent is optional, but sometimes you might opt for that if it kind of impedes your communication efficiency. What's your take on that?
I would mostly agree with all that you mentioned. Like, I would definitely agree that, again, if you can, I think it's like a very important addition that you mentioned, that you have to also understand what the other people say. Like, if you can communicate straight up to like the American audiences, let's say, because we talk about American market here most of the time. So if they understand you, you understand them, then it's not a problem. When it's something breaks, like they don't understand you again, like they ask, as you mentioned, they repeatedly ask you like, hey, what that happened? But it's also very important that not just one person asks you repeatedly what, because it also very tricky with the US, the US culture. There's like let's say open culture to like immigrants, which is a lot of investors, startups, etc. For example, in the region that I live in, there's a little bit, not many, but a little bit of people, let's say, they're skeptical to immigrants, and just like they're skeptical to accents, and they like they like, even they understand, they kind of like trying to like put you down that you have an accent, but it's not
rare. Yeah, I believe
yeah,
it's not widespread.
it's rare, but it happens. And when you think like it just happens, like when you have an accent, then they think like you can't execute, like you can't have like a good like communication job here. Like some people, it's very weird, but most of the people like it's not like that. I'm just saying that if you heard one time one person is like asking you like what, like not understanding, but the rest is understanding, don't feel like lack of confidence. It's just the problems of that one particular person. But if like on scale, like when you're communicating with Americans and they like don't understand you well, then you have an issue. And this happens, and like I know the examples of that when it happens, and you have to enhance your English skill, and that's matter, that's important. With the seniority level, I'd say it's sometimes it depends on the seniority level, but you made that like an example of like developer, like even the entry level, like cold caller, let's say, if she like it's mostly connected to the amount of communication that you produce as in your work. So if the amount of communication in your work is high, then you have to like invest in your English more and more. If the amount of communication is low, like the written communication, we not include that, just like speaking communication, then you can be okay.
That's a valuable insight. Yeah, thank you for that. And basically, we are reaching the end of our stream, and just a couple of things. Now, let me get my thoughts together. Right. Yeah. There's another thing that I'd like to quickly discuss with you. So, linguists and psycholinguists, they are promoting this notion that is called personality shift when one starts speaking a foreign language, and this foreign language, he speaks this language at quite high level. So the notion goes that when you speak your native language, you're one type of person. When you shift to a foreign language that you speak quite good, you experience a personality shift. What it looks like, you might actually find that you start making funnier jokes, or you're becoming more laid back, or I don't know, you're becoming more extroverted. So this phenomenon is called, well, I call it your English self. So would you say that your personality changes when you speak English in regards to your native language? Do you experience the shift?
Yeah, I'd say yes. I'd say this influence, definitely. I just trying to find out like what's like the exact cases, like how is it different. But I guess most of the time it's just like the positive mind frame. Like English gives and confidence. English, American culture, it's provides you the level of be uniqueness to it. Like uniqueness is not a word, but like I just
American dream.
Yeah, like it provides you the variety. I love the variety. Like you don't need to be like this way or another. You can just be who you are, and you can find the people who would be on the same page, and the companies that be on the same page, and the clients, and you can build business around like your own values. You don't need to be like one or like two things. Like you need to be like in the norms, and certain norms, right? Like there's no norms. So I'd say like when I think, because I think in English, I dream in English, right? Like I'm not thinking in my native language most of the time during the day. I think in English. So I guess the personality shift is that it's like more positive, more like open, more like American dream, rather than if I think about my native language, right? It's a different vibe to it, for sure.
Yeah.
It's a different vibe to it. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
Like, yeah, I guess like, and then you like your like native language self, it's different with it. Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's nice to hear that this theory it's actually resonates with you. Yeah, I'm happy to get this feedback. It's not my theory though. It's other smart guys developed it, just for the reference. All right. So, one pre-last question: is complete cultural assimilation even possible? Do you think?
I think so. When I answered like I did, I truly believe I think so. I mean, I'm on the journey. This is the journey. Definitely. But I feel like there is the ending. Like I can't say like you die. Like let's say I die in the United States. Like how do I judge if I'm assimilated to like to the culture? That's like an interesting question. I know. I'll give you an example. I'll judge it this way. Like, Anastasia, I'll ask you a question. Like, if you die, like, God forbid, but if you die, like, tomorrow, where would you want to be buried? In your native country or in the UK?
In the US, please.
The US. See, you have to be here. Come here. I actually know the example where, like, the dad of my friend died in Russia, and he was buried here in the US. Like not the buried, but like the ashes were like in the ocean in the US. So he was burned in ashes. Yeah, it's interesting story. But like before, I was like, no, I'm like Russian self. So like it's like bury me in Russia, you know. Now I would say bury me in the US. So I feel like if you're 60 years old and like your life was like 40 years in the US, so it's 70, 80, like you are assimilated, like you integrated in the culture. You're American, definitely.
Yeah. So people that I get to talk with, they usually give different kinds of answers. Some that complete cultural assimilation is impossible. You're saying a different thing. And I actually want to kind of hope for the better. Yeah. So your approach, your attitude resonates with me. Yeah. So I'm going to be rooting for this approach. And last question. What message would you like to send to anybody who's currently in immigration, trying to adapt to the new culture, or maybe, building their startup in the US? Well, let's actually combine these two. So, advice for startuppers and advice for those who are in immigration.
I say be patient. Still, I'm here 4.5 years. And only like 2 years ago, I started feeling very, very confident, and it's just getting better every day. But I'm patient with it. Like for 2.5 years, you have to be patient. Like for me, it's in 2.5 years. For someone else, it's 10 years. So give yourself space. I'd say like give yourself your time. It doesn't like don't look at someone else. Like let's say me, which it happened pretty fast. I'd say pretty fast. Maybe someone else is even faster. Like in a year, they're like fully integrated into society. But I'm just saying, like from the examples that I've heard here, like my assimilation to the American society was pretty fast, and it's not necessarily could happen to you, and it's okay. So, and I say like the advice would be to just feel yourself better, like try to like discover yourself better, like go into the roots of your soul and understand like yeah, this is what I want, and this is just like I have to stick. And if challenges come up, I just have to solve them. This is part of the path. I choose this path because I want it. I truly want it. And like you, if you truly want something, it's easier to like believe in it. It's easier to make it work. So I say like listen to yourself most of the time. And like if you really want and enjoy the country, you want an immigration, being an immigrant, just be it and give yourself time, space, and patience to fully adapt.
Yeah, that's one good piece of advice from Olga. Thank you. What about startuppers? One piece of advice for those who are willing to, yeah.
No, that's a good one. Oh, I have a good one. Find yourself and people who can execute best practices into your project. You have to learn, you have to know that what you do is close or the best possible way of doing this thing and making this work. And if you're sure like you're doing it best way possible, and either if it works or doesn't work, you don't have to like blame no one or like have like be disappointed about the results, because you know you did everything possible because you executed the best way possible.
Yeah. That's what my psychologist keeps telling me. Yeah.
Yeah,
Stop beating
you
yourself
have to,
up. Yeah.
yeah, it's like just to like so for the notice, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be ideal. It does not have to be ideal. It's different. It has to be the best like way, like the fastest. It just has to be the best from like other startups perspectives. Like you have to learn what other startups did very, very well and know that they did it, how they did it very, very well. Know that have this knowledge, someone brings you this knowledge or someone brings you this expertise, or you have this expertise and you have to execute as good as they are, and create something on top of that, and like you sure you're doing everything in your power to make it work. And if it doesn't work, it's not on you. It's just like it's the market, it's like the product, it's everything you did was like the best as you can.
Yeah, that's a healthy attitude. I agree. Well, anyway, if there is something else you wanted to share, Oля, with our listeners who are going to be listening to the actual podcast, please go ahead. And we are rounding up, right? I'd like to thank you for being my first guest from the US, actually. Yeah, can I show this heart again? Will it work? It might not, but I'm still showing it. Yeah, thank you for sharing your
it does
valuable.
work. Look.
Oh, good. I love it. Yeah. Right. So thank you for sharing your valuable insights into B2B sales and into how startups work while they fail, and moreover into what kind of English do international teams need, and whether it is possible to, adapt to blend in with the Americans. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to hear American accent.
My pleasure as well. Thank you so much, Nastasia, for having me here. I love the questions. I love our conversation. I think it was like a good blend, a good mix of like things about business and not only just like personal things, which is also important. And I'd love to,
We'll see.
I wish I
Yeah.
bring value. Like the value is most important. It's also like very most important thing in the sales-led growth execution, when your like startup brings value to like before you like subscribe to any like price to anything, like you bring value right away. So hopefully like you find like at least one insight into this conversation, and that was a value to your audience. And thank you so much again for hosting me, keeping me here.
Yeah.